Hello and welcome back to another lecture of Royal Aeronautical Society Pakistan Division. Today we'll be listening about lost adjusting as a career and role of lost adjusters or surveyors in the aviation industry. We have our wonderful guest, Ms. Rishika. She has worked for McLarens Aviation in Abu Dhabi. She is currently working in McLarens Aviation Abu Dhabi UAE. She obtained her bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering and initially worked as a trainee at Emirates prior her joining to McLarens Aviation. She conducts market research, data analysis, and technical documentation review to report on claims and identify adjustments. She is currently working towards obtaining her professional qualification from Chartered Institute of Lost Adjusters, CILA, where she also volunteers in a special interest group, Future Focus Committee. Rishika recognized the importance of continuous professional development and has volunteered for the Royal Aeronautical Society in various roles over the past 6 years. Currently working as the International Officer of the Young Persons Committee, assisting branch members globally and streamlining the communication process. Thank you so much, Rishika, for agreeing on delivering a lecture under the platform of Royal Aeronautical Society. Welcome on board, Rishika.
Okay, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for today's session. As you all can see from my very first slide, we're going to be talking about loss adjusting. And like I've said before as well, when I've spoken to a few of you all, that it's a very specialized field, but certain aspects of that field can be complicated, especially when you don't know much about it and you're trying to explore a career in this field. So to put it simply, my objective today is for you all to go away with the basic foundational ideas. If you're interested to have a career in this field, then how can you go about it? So for the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, what you're going to be, I can't change the screen. Yeah. So for the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, this is what you're going to be going through with me. We're going to explore what is the role of a loss adjuster, what is required to become one, and how many very basic information. But when I started working with McLarens Aviation, I think it was in my second year or third year when I decided that I want to get professionally qualified as a loss adjuster. I went online. I'm trying to see all of this information that's out there. Where do I begin? What is it that I'm exempted from? Which level can I go up to? All of that confused me that I just scrapped the idea only to return after 2 years. I just don't want you all to waste that 2 years. So I'm going to be here trying to make sure I try my best to guide you as to the simple basic steps, what you can take if you want to start your career in loss adjusting. But of course, for my aviation audience, and also because I am from an aviation background as well, I will be taking you through loss adjusting in aviation, letting you know what my company, McLarens Aviation, does, and going through some case studies that are basically going to, and that you will handle if you become a loss adjuster as well. So to begin with, who is a loss adjuster? This is what CILA Chartered, which is Charter Institute of Loss Adjuster, defines as a loss adjuster, who's basically whose predominant activity is the investigation, management, quantification, validation, and resolution of property, casualty, or any other losses. Now, this particular definition, I've gotten it from this book. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Property Institute, Property Insurance Laws and Claims. This is what you would need to get your chartered status. This is the majority of your learning portion, and I will be talking about it during the course of the presentation. But when you just read this definition, I think I should have given you another heads up that this can be a little bit dry, but stick with me because we're going to be reading a lot of like policies and contracts and agreements as a loss adjuster. So as you study for this or as you get into the field, this language becomes very familiar. So just a heads up, I know it can look a bit dry right now, but it gets easier as you go with it. But hey, today we have a Google, a best friend, who is going to define this for us as well. So Google says a loss adjuster is an insurance agent who assesses the amount of compensation that should be paid after a person has claimed on their insurance policy. I'm sure you all have cars and health insurance and car insurance and so on. So what happens? Say, for example, as a policy holder, you have a car which has just undergone an accident and you've been hit with a bill of $5,000. Okay, that's a very expensive repair, but for the sake of an argument, let's talk in dollars, and I'm going to use big numbers because that's what you will see in aviation as well. So generally in your policy, you would be seeing something called deductible or an excess. And that is basically for you as a policy holder to bear. So say your policy excess or your deductible is $1,000. And the repair cost of your car turns out to be $800. So in that case, that amount will be yours as a policyholder to bear. The moment it goes above 1,000, like I said, if you have a $5,000 bill, then that $4,000 of net amount is what your insurance company is going to pay you, subject to the policy conditions being met. That's straightforward. And that's why ideally you need an insurance policy, because it's important as it helps you get your indemnification for the losses that you have incurred. But think about it this way: if an insurance company is going to go about paying settlements for all the claims that are filed left, right, and center, they're probably going to end up running in losses, because some claims can be fraudulent, some claims can be exaggerated. And that is why a loss adjuster, a third-party consultant, would come in to assess the damage for the insurance company. And the idea is not to save the money for the insurance company or to pay more money to the policyholder. The idea is just to be fair, assess the facts, and report on that basis with whatever the policy condition is going to be dictating. So I'm going to give you an aviation example as to what we do generally when we are adjusting a claim. When you have an engine damage, say an engine has undergone a damage which is covered in the policy, an FOD, bird strike, or maybe shipment damage, could be anything. And it has suffered a few fan blade damages, but the engine is also very close to its overhaul condition, and the repair would require the engine to come. So make a complete refurbishment of the engine. The moment an engine is put into a shop, it can cost millions of dollars, maybe 3 million, 4 million, depending on the engine type and the kind of work it requires. During this time, it's essential to segregate what is actually incident-related cost and what is related to wear and tear, corrosion, non-incident related costs. So that is something we as surveyors or loss adjuster in aviation industry would do. And that is also something you in any other industry would do as well. Another example is this of a sliding tube of a landing gear. This one had a hard body impact to the sliding tube. Most likely the hard body, the debris was trapped in the sliding tube. And it was when it was compressed during the landing roll. As you can see, this particular unit is an ultimate life cycle unit. So this unit has 60,000 life cycles. That means it will be operated for 60,000 cycles and be taken out of service. When this incident happened, it had already completed 18,000 cycles. And according to the manufacturer, the best and the most cost-effective method for the repairs is actually replacement, because the time taken to remove the unit, ship the unit, and actually inspect could be more because this particular unit had already undergone an overhaul once, which means they weren't sure whether or not the minimum thickness which is required for the base metal to have would be met following the inspections. So this was conveyed to the insurance company, and even they were of the same opinion that if it's going to be easier and more cost effective to replace the unit, then that's the route they're going to take. So in this case, you get a new unit, which was, I think, $170,000 or something. But now, as a policy holder, if I'm the policy holder, When the incident occurred, the unit had already incurred 18,000 cycles. But now, after the incident, I have been given a unit which has 60,000 cycles. So I'm in a better off position. So in a betterment adjustment, where they would ensure that the cost for that 18,000 cycles, which has already been completed before the incident occurred, is adjusted and removed from the costing of the new unit. So that's roughly the kind of adjustments we would do. But of course, that's just one side of cost adjustment that I'm talking about. You have all the cause, the damage, and everything that we're also going to get to during the course of the presentation. Having established who a loss adjuster is, let's just look into some of the skills and qualifications that can be useful. Okay, I'm not saying all of this is required, but they will be useful. And that's because it heavily depends on your expertise, the type of adjusting you're going to opt for, and the field you would like to work in. It could be marine, it could be aviation, it could be property, anything. The choices are endless, right? So we're going to really look into a very generic form of skills. And so I would, no matter which field you're working in, which industry you're working in, and irrespective of the type of adjustment you choose to do. Conflict resolution, problem solving, good researching, communication. In fact, I would even add negotiation over there, because at any given point of time, you're liaising with so many parties, right? You're going to be liaising with policyholders, insurance companies, brokers, repair organizations. It is essential to ensure all of these parties, all of these groups are updated. You have managed their expectations. And because there are multiple groups and because we're talking big money here, conflict can happen and will happen during the course of your career. And you need to be able to ensure how you're going to be resolving it. Researching, I have put that in because of the variety of claims you handle. You're not going to know everything. I don't know everything. I have my seniors who don't know a lot of the information that comes across, and it's essential to know where to learn. And that's why it's really important to have interests you. I think this could turn out to be a good career for you as well. With respect to qualifications, engineering, surveying, risk management, finance, all of these can be helpful. But again, like I said, it depends on how specialized you want to become as a loss adjuster. For example, let's just take a non-aviation example. You have a finance background, you're probably a chartered accountant, and you have an interest to become a loss adjuster. I would imagine perhaps something like business interruption would be a good choice for you. Because your sound knowledge in finance, because you have a sound knowledge in finance, I believe that's something you can transfer with yourself while you're handling business interruption claims. But equally, to know the process of how the loss adjusting actually works, I would imagine these professional qualifications can come extremely useful. And these are not that are all out there, but these are one of the more known ones, the more recognized ones. That's why I have put it over here in my presentation for you all. The most recognized one out of all of this for a loss adjuster would be the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusting, which is CILA. That's what I will be talking about slightly more in detail in today's presentation. You have these many levels in Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters for CILA. You have certification, diploma, advanced diploma, associate, fellow, and masters. Now, it really depends on which stage of the career you're in currently right now. Maybe you're just starting out. Maybe you already have 3 to 4 years of work experience or more than that. So depending on your experience, there is a very good chance you might even be able to skip certain levels. In fact, if you have some kind of other qualifications or CPD, which is continuous professional development hours, just to go back to my previous slide, you have this Chartered Insurance Institute. Maybe you have done some kind of qualification to get a better idea about insurance. Certain qualifications over them can be counted towards your courses here, and you might just be exempted from giving, say, CH1, CH2, CH3 examination, and you can start off with diploma. Or you can even start off with advanced diploma and so on. It highly depends on your experience and qualifications that you have in the past. For the sake of today's presentation, let's imagine you're just starting out in the industry and you have chosen to do certification CH1. And the moment you sign up to do this examination, you have 1 year period. Within that 1 year, the moment you get your exam voucher, you can give your exam anytime. You have 1 year validity, give your exam anytime during that period. You don't really have to give it after 1 year or after 6 months, anytime when you're ready, because you have your study materials, you study for the examination, and you sit for your CH1 exam. That could be within 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, doesn't matter, as long as it is within 1 year. These are all essay type examinations and not multiple choice questions. And the examination would vary between 2 hours to 3.5 hours, depending on which level you are at. So I believe certification, diploma, they're roughly around 2 hours. Advanced diploma, associate, they can go up to 3.5 hours examination each. And again, they're all self-paced exam. Say you have completed your CH1 examination and you're not ready to give your CH2 just yet, you can hold it off. You're not required to do this immediately back to back. You've done your CH1 this year, you want to do your CH2 next year, and so on, totally fine. You've done your CH1 within 3-4 months, you've done it brilliantly, completing your studies and giving your exams, you can move on to CH2. So it's a self-paced examination. A lot of non-aviation adjusters, say for example, in property adjustments, you have just finished your schooling, you are interested in loss adjusting. A lot of people, they tend to join as claims technician or an assistant loss adjuster, especially in the West, because that allows you to learn a lot of the processes on the job. And what's generally done is you handle smaller and less complex claims, and then you work your way upwards. And that's ideally how your growth happens in a loss adjusting field. Yeah, you tend to handle more and more complex matters, and that's how your seniority levels increases. Equally, a lot of these people would then get their professional qualifications parallelly. So you would be getting your chartered sort of this is essential when you reach the chartered state, especially when you're trying to get your associate level. So I've just marked that as ACS1 and ACS2. Ideally, the associate level first examination is related to your critical assessment skills, and associate level 2 is where you're going to be choosing a topic based on which you're going to give your examination. That could be interruption, that's where you would decide. And it also requires you to have work experience in the adjusting field for at least 5 years. So that's why, you know, it's better to start the qualifications, especially the ones that you're doing before, certification, diploma, and advanced diploma, while you're working, or at least you need to start developing that work experience, because it will come to use when you're trying to get your associate level course. And for fellowship, you need to demonstrate your continuous professional development. And for masters, you can then do your theses on a topic of your choice. In the past, I have come across a topic that was, is loss adjusting a profession or a commodity? So yeah, that is quite interesting. So you can choose the topic, and then again, the timing of completing this depends totally up to you, because it's a self-paced program. Once you have your loss adjusting certification course, or once you've started your career as a loss adjuster, you have different types of loss adjusting to choose from here. The most common one is property, as I believe most of you all would be aware of this. A property adjuster generally works on commercial residence to businesses to offices, shops, and the contents of these units like furniture, stables, laptops, etc. And there could be smaller claims like storm damage, theft, to a larger claim like fire and explosion. Then you have business interruption claim. This is basically when the loss adjuster is trying to analyze your trade and how much your trade has been affected due to this interruption. So a lot of factors would influence your trade, your historic performance, for example. Is there a new competitor in the market? Is there a competitor that has gone off the market? So all of these would be an influencing factor to determine how your trade, how your costing in your business has been affected. And that's what a business interruption loss adjuster would do. If you all can imagine, this one was probably the most popular one during COVID. A lot of business owners did not have business interruption cover, and some that did weren't even aware that they had business interruption cover. So that was pretty interesting for me to know when I was reading about it during the COVID year. But yeah, I believe these first two are quite popular in terms of loss adjusting. But then we also have liability. As the name suggests, you would understand a liability adjuster would normally act on behalf of insurance companies to investigate and report for their insured against whom the claim is brought about against by the third party. This could be product liability, employer's liability, public liability, and so on. We have claimant. This particular one is a bit different. As you've seen earlier, most of our instructions would come from the insurance company who would ask us to go and look at what's gone wrong, and then we report back to them. A claimant adjuster is, however, a bit different. A claimant adjuster is employed by the policyholder, where a claimant adjuster would help the policyholder with their claim submission and provide them with the advice and assistance that they need throughout the claim. Then we have subsidence. This is again a very specialized one, like I would talk about aviation in just some time, but subsidence is where a lot of insurance companies, when a property or any commercial property is suffering damage due to subsidence, heave, or landslip, then a lot of insurance company would prefer for a very specialized subsidence loss adjuster to handle that particular claim and to handle and assess that particular claim. So that subsidence. Fraud investigator, as the name suggests, would be the ones who would be investigating and reporting should a fraud be, predicted or suspected. And if there is fraud, then there will, of course, be police intervention and prosecution as well. The reason I'm going through these different types of loss adjusting is because the basic principle of how and what you're looking for would still remain the same. What you're reporting on would also still remain the same, except in certain cases like subsidence, where you require a more specialized role. I have seen people move between property and business interruption loss adjusting as well. So if you do want to become, and if you do want to get into a loss adjusting field, you do have an option to move within these different industries as well. However, I wouldn't recommend that so much for marine, aviation, and oil and gas as well, because they require a different specialized skill set as well. So I would imagine from aviation to non-aviation might just be easier. You could move from non-aviation to aviation as well, subject to you having that kind of aviation background, which is what we'll talk in our next slide. So loss adjusting in aviation is slightly different because loss adjusters in aviation are called surveyors more than loss adjusters. And they're more often technical experts than they are policy experts. So it's very important to distinguish this from the get-go, that what we are technical experts, what we are not are insurance experts or, investigators reporting on policy coverage. My mom, she sometimes thinks I'm an engineer, and she sometimes thinks I'm an insurance expert. And I don't know why, but I'm neither that nor the other one, but she has not made up her mind. And that's not the case with just her. It's also the case with some of my friends. In fact, some of our clients as well, where when I say clients, the operators or, the policy holders, whenever we go out and say, for example, I'm going into survey an engine, They can sometimes just assume that we are just insurance agents. We're here to not give them their money and all of that. No, but that's not true. Like I said before, we do have our own code of conducts that we have to operate within. And it's essential to be fair and report on facts. And every non-aviation adjuster would be responsible to also review policy, look at their terms and conditions, see what is covered, what is not covered, and what has gone wrong, say in the case of a property damage, and should the policyholder be getting money? Is it a rejected claim or a claim? All of that would be analyzed. Whereas in aviation, what we are required to do is just report on facts. What's gone wrong? What's the damage? How much it's going to cost? And that's why the insurance company would approach us. And I'm not saying that's also not the case with non-aviation adjusting. It highly depends on the instructing party. The instructing party might reach out to you as a loss adjuster in whichever field you're working in and whatever type of adjusting you're doing for a very specialized advice as well. So it would, of course, depend on the instructing party, but I'm just giving you a very generic approach here. In aviation, because like I said, it's based more on your technical experience. That's why you will find a lot of loss adjusters or surveyors, as I say, would have their background in engineering, piloting, or maintenance. And they would be working in the industry for like 8, 10, even 15 years. And then they would come into loss adjusting because they have this, massive and wealth of experience in aviation that they can bring in with them and provide the technical expertise that insurance companies are looking for in aviation claims. In all of this, where do I fit in? So I am a grad. I entered the loss adjusting field as a graduate. However, I could only do that because I do have a background in aviation. So as Adiba very kindly mentioned it during my introduction as well, my background is in aeronautical engineering, and I completed a training program with Emirates as well, during which time I was working on their different workshops from cabin to engine, wheels and brakes, structures, etc. All of that was essential for me to enter the industry as a loss adjuster in aviation, because I do need to have some knowledge about aviation because of the amount of our review work that goes into the technical adjustments. So when you're looking at an engine, you do need to know what is a compressor, what is a turbine, what's a fan blade, what's an inlet cowl, etc. So you need to be able to understand your tech log documents, your repair work scopes, and your costings. So you do need to have that knowledge in aviation. And I would say that is one factor that would distinguish aviation adjusting to the rest of the adjusting types that I discussed before. And the same goes for marine, oil and gas as well, I would imagine. Speaking of McLarens Aviation, which is one of the largest loss adjusting companies in the world, what we do basically is we become involved when an incident occurs. Yeah, when an incident occurs, the insurance company would instruct us, and then we will go and look at what's happened, and we would provide our advice. Our advice is generally given to policyholders, insurance companies, like when I say policyholders, it would be operators, owners of the aircraft, whoever we are dealing with at any given point of time. And we would also be giving advice to third parties if it's needed, or repair organizations and so on. Our report would comprise of the cause, damage, repairs, and costs for the same. But initially, we don't have all of this data, right? So the moment an incident occurs, we're not going to be having all the data with us as to how much it's going to cost, what's the damage, what's the extent of the damage. So there's going to be very preliminary information available. And based on that, do we have any issues arising? Can we see anything that can go wrong, possibly? We do need to cover all of that in our report and make sure the insurance company is updated about it. At the same time, it's essential to make sure you keep all the other parties updated about your concerns and what you think they should be doing. Ultimately, what needs to be done with the insured item, in this particular case, say an aircraft, would be the choice of the policyholder. It's our duty to just provide the best advice we can. From time to time, we would also communicate and liaise with quite a lot of different set of groups like operators, airport authorities, like your local civil aviation authorities if needed. If it's a big accident, that includes the CAA to get involved, and they have their own investigation report. Maybe would need that information as well, and third parties. However, for majority of the time, this is what we generally see. I would say this is who we would work with about 70% of the time, 70 to 80% of the time, where you have a policyholder, an insured, a broker, an insurance company, and you have us. And we would deal in this area. However, sometimes the instructing party can be lawyers. So lawyers will be involved and they might reach out to us for a technical advice. They will take care of the legal part of things, but they would reach out to us to provide them with any technical information if need be. Or sometimes the insurance company can be instructing the lawyers for the legal advice, and we as McLarens for our technical advice, and we would work in adjacent with the lawyers. From time to time, there are certain experts who get hired as well. And what do I mean by this? Say, for example, you have an engine damage and that's caused due to a blade failure. However, it's not from the get-go very clear as to what has caused that blade failure. Sometimes it can be clear, there was a bird strike and you can see that damage looks like a soft body impact. So it gets easier to understand the cause in that manner. But not always is that that's straightforward. So in that case, maybe we might hire, when I say we might hire, we of course have to make sure we take an underwriter's instructions, and subject to their approval, an expert would be hired to look into a blade failure, like a metallurgist or someone who can actually figure out what has caused the blades to fail. So that would be the case with experts from time to time. But majority of the time, this is the box we work with. What are the major types of events that we deal with? Total losses. This would basically be when an aircraft is crashed or completely destroyed. That could be for various reasons. But in this case, the settlement, if the loss is covered, again, I would say it highly depends on the policy, which is the call the insurance company would make. Again, I would like to highlight that because, as I said, we don't really concern ourselves with the policy coverage. We would only concern ourselves with the damage and the technical facts. So should underwriters find that the loss is covered, then the total loss is basically when the agreed value, which is specified in the policy, is what the underwriters would pay the policyholder or the operator in this case, or the owner, whoever is insured on the policy. Constructive total loss, or CTL, is basically when, say you have an aircraft which is insured at an agreed value of $2 million. And it can be repaired, and the cost to repair that aircraft is $1.85 million. It's almost very close to its agreed value. So even though it can come back to its serviceable state, but it doesn't make economical sense to go ahead with the repairs. And that's when an aircraft is declared CTL, which is basically constructive total loss. Then you have partial losses, which is majority of the cases that we handle, where you could have FOD, which is a foreign object debris damage, or you could have like shipment damage, weather damage, such as lightning strike. All of these would result in partial losses, which is basically the amount that a claim settlement reaches, which is neither constructive total loss or total loss. Fire damage, as the name suggests, caused due to fire. Loss of usage. So certain policyholders or certain operators might have on their policy coverage for loss of use, which is ideally the amount that the insurance company pays to the policyholder for the time that their aircraft is damaged due to a covered incident, when every other conditions of the policy is met and, you have a loss of use coverage. So it might be capped at a certain amount, to use a replacement aircraft of a similar type at a specified amount, etc. Now, this would, of course, be subject to different kinds of policies out there, but that's the loss of use coverage one would have as the policyholder. Then you have third-party claims that can arise due to third-party damages and so on. And those are the kind of claims we generally handle. When a claim does occur, as I said, when McLaren's gets involved, because we get instructed by the insurance company after a claim has occurred, this is what we will do. The moment a claim occurs, let's say, take this picture for an example. As you can see, a lot of things are going wrong around the aircraft. What we are going to be looking at is the circumstances. What's gone wrong? When and where did it happen? What is the type of aircraft or the engine, whatever's been damaged? At which phase of flight did it happen? Was it a ground incident like in this one? Was it a bird strike during takeoff? Is it an engine shutdown in flight? So that is the phase of flight. That is what we're trying to understand. And what's the cause of loss? Over here, as you can see, it's the impact to the engine and the location and extent of damage. We need to determine how badly whatever the unit that is damaged is damaged. And that's the basic information that we would be requiring to report to the insurance company. The cost will come, but at a later stage. But this is something we would like to get in our preliminary data. This is one example, which is a ground incident. As if we go back, it's not the same one, but I'm just using a different example to give you all an idea about the kinds of an A340, which was damaged due to aft of the fuselage. Looking at the picture, you can see it's heavily damaged. It's heavily damaged the fuselage skin. The stringer and the frames were heavily damaged as well. The windows were broken. And the moment you look at this incident, we got these pictures and we got the claim notification. We as surveyors, what are we starting to think? There are quite a lot of issues with this one. It was an A340 aircraft damage in Kabul, Afghanistan, and the repairs itself was going to be complex. The location, because as I said, it was in Kabul, Afghanistan, was going to be quite difficult. There was very limited to no local support for repairs of this kite. There was no hangarage for a wide body aircraft. And this particular incident happened just before the winter, and we were approaching winter. So weather becomes a factor. Because there is no hangarage, and there was no way the aircraft could be ferry flown in the state it is currently in. I mean, you're not going to be able to fly that aircraft in the state it was in. You would require a certain amount of temporary repairs to be completed at site, which is why weather becomes a factor. I'm sure all of you who are in a technical field or in engineering or maintenance, you would realize the importance of completing this repairs in a temperature controlled environment, which could not be obtained during the winter, especially their peak winter there. So that was another factor. And this is the picture of how it looks like on the inside, just to give you a bit more perspective of the kind of damage we were dealing with. We could have approached the manufacturer as well, and it was unlikely they would come to site to conduct the repairs, but it wasn't impossible. However, the repairs that could be estimated to involve them to complete this repair would exceed $4 million. And this particular aircraft was insured at an agreed value of $3 million. So as you can imagine, this could have been easily declared as CTL that I discussed earlier. However, this is where your expertise as a surveyor or a loss adjuster would come in, where you would need to research, where you would need to know the kind of people who would be able to do this repair. So we reached out to different repair organization companies who could provide the repair for this particular aircraft type, who had approval to do repairs for this kind of aircraft, who also had approval to do repairs at this particular location in Kabul, Afghanistan. So that's another thing that is added factor. And because we couldn't approach the manufacturer, we approached a Part 21 expert an EASA Part 21 expert who could come and look at this particular damage and provide us with the repair work scope. And because all of this took place in Afghanistan, we had to be careful about the logistics. We had to conduct our risk assessment, security assessment, safety assessment. So we had a separate logistics company taking care of that as well. So as you can imagine, the number of parties we are dealing with at one point of time, Part 21 expert, MRO, insurance company, the insured themselves, and the logistics company. So there are 4 to 5 people who were involved in this, 4 to 5 groups who were involved in this particular incident. And it was extremely crucial to keep all parties on the same page every single time. This particular loss was, I believe the claim was settled at $1.15 million. So that's from 3 million to 4 million, and then $1.15 million. And that's with all parties going away home happy, getting what they want. And I think that's extremely important to make sure all parties are on board with what needs to be done in the most cost-effective manner. Then we have another example of a rejected takeoff claim, where a Boeing 767 rejected takeoff because the crew noticed the cockpit window was open. And because the aircraft would not be able to reach the altitude due to the required pressurization, the crew decided to reject the takeoff. High energy stop was completed, all checks were completed, and a successful departure took place shortly after. Upon touchdown at the destination, though, the tires exploded and the wheel trims were allowed to come in contact with the runway. The debris from the tire was able to lift off and hit the wings and the landing gear door and causing a lot of impact damage. Cause overheating of brakes. Why? Because there was not enough cooling period provided between the rejected takeoff and the departure. And this is how that looked like. This claim landed at $550,000, I believe, roughly around that. So this is what the kind of claims you can expect in aviation surveying. However, this is not all that we do. We also do one-off separate kind of expertise or services that we provide to insurance company as well. For example, wreckage disposal. When an aircraft is crashed, and whatever parts that you can recover following a crash, it needs to be disposed of correctly. It needs to be disposed of in accordance with EASA Part M requirement. And why is that? Because when an aircraft undergoes a crash and all the, say with respect to the insurance aspect, everything is settled, the insurance company has paid all the required settlement to the insured. And following that, what happens is with respect to the aircraft part, that becomes a liability for the insurance company. So it is extremely essential that following all the legal paperwork, all the legal cases, that those aircraft parts are disposed of in such a manner that it cannot enter service again. So this one was one such aircraft where we were able to dispose of the recovered aircraft parts, whatever could be recovered. And there were a bunch of documents on board, bunch of documents from the operator. All of this had to be reviewed and disposed of so that it cannot enter back into service. And again, it cannot be identified as well. So these are the serial numbers and part numbers, which had to be again broken down to piece part level to ensure there was no way of identifying it and no way of bringing it back to service. All the documents were reviewed and shredded. And then this was given off to the disposal company for recycling or whatever they need to do with it. But this process has to be managed by us and ensured that everything is conducted in accordance to the EASA Part M requirement. And this is one of the service that one would reach out to you, or insurance company would reach out to you for anything out of your regular claim work as well. And this wouldn't just generally happen in aviation, but it could potentially happen in other industry as well. So to summarize, I hope I was able to cover few examples and few basic guidelines as to what you can expect in non-aviation industry of loss adjusting, such as property and aviation industry, going forward with the professional qualifications that are required, and what kind of work experience and checklists you would require to meet the basic requirements to enter loss adjusting as a field. Now, I'm not trying to be a salesperson and selling loss adjusting as a career, or maybe I am, I don't know. But I think the point here is, if you are interested in the field and if you don't know where to begin, I just wanted to pass few guidelines from the non-aviation and aviation perspective. And because there are so many different industry and so many types of adjusting, I think it becomes a bit difficult to do this in a 45 minutes or an hour presentation as well. But I hope you got some general and basic ideas through the presentation. And yeah, I think it's a great role and great profession to work in. It gives you a lot of challenging claims as well. Your career progression in this industry is going to be based on the kind of claims you handle. Like, it gets more and more and more complex. And that's how the growth looks like in this particular profession. And thank you so much for listening to me today. And if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them right now. Thank you again.